Route 66, I mean, I mention in every speech that I give, Oklahoma will be the premier Route 66 state in the country when I am done as your lieutenant governor.
Hey guys, everybody knows this is Matt Pinnell. Matt's been a friend of ours for 10 years since we got started. I met him when he was with the Hancock Committee for the States. That's exactly right. And then from there, he became our state chair for the GOP. And then he went on to the RNC and led the grassroots efforts in all 50 states. And now he serves as our lieutenant governor, and I think he's got a very great vision. He and Governor Stitt have a wonderful vision for Oklahoma. And I would love to hear what some of the things that they want to do, the visions that they have, and what we can do to help them make it happen. So please join me in welcoming Matt Pinnell.
All right. Oh, it's fine. Do I need this, or should I just?
Yeah, because for the
I need it for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, it was not your fault. It was totally my fault that I'm late this morning. I apologize. I was preparing to, we're filming an episode of Burger Brothers this morning. Do you watch Burger Brothers? Yeah, okay. Well, to tell you the truth, I wasn't sure what it was. Either the O'Connor who runs the Outsider House, and I believe one of our Fox 25, 23. I really probably should know a little bit more. They just asked me to pick my favorite burger place, so we're filming down at McNelly's downtown, who has a great burger. So that's my life as your lieutenant governor. I film burger episodes. I get paid for that, yeah. But I'll kind of catch you guys up on our office, what we've been up to. I would certainly let you know. I mean, many of you all came by our office first session. Our office is always open to you. There's a lot of construction going on, so I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be when we get into legislative session. We will be at that Capitol, I assure you, every single day. But come by. I believe I will be in the same office until the new office is ready. The governor's office will be finished. The lieutenant governor office will not be. So I mean it. I know you all will be at the Capitol quite a bit next legislative session. My office is always open to you. It has been refreshing, I will tell you, working with Governor Stitt. For a lot of reasons, but for my position as lieutenant governor, I think you've probably seen that it's a lot different than previous governor-lieutenant governor relationships. He's given me some things to do, I guess you could say, that are on top of the quote-unquote constitutional duties of the lieutenant governor, but I'm in a room that understands the Constitution, so you are well aware that lieutenant governor position is kind of a blank slate. I mean, it's kind of what do you want in your lieutenant governor? I mean, you know what I ran on, that I firmly believed it was a sales and marketing job, that if you're statutorily the chairman of the Tourism Commission, then why don't you own tourism? Because I think it certainly could be one of our strengths as a state, could create a whole lot of sales tax revenue that all of our cities need. We're way too sales tax dependent as a state. But if we're going to continue to be that way, then let's go after some of the easiest dollars to go after, and those are tourism dollars. And then my wife and I, you know our story. We run a small business, and I really believe that entrepreneurship and small business growth are the future. I think they're the future for most states, and we're way too oil and gas dependent. We're going to continue to be an oil and gas state, but we've got to diversify our economy. So I'm certainly always looking for ways to do that, and I think certainly at the top of the list should be keeping our young talent here, our entrepreneurs that have an idea for a business. How do we help them start that business? Not exactly inside the public sector. This is a private sector thing, but I'm a elected official that is trying to cast that vision to people in the private sector to start accelerators and incubators. That's That's something that, again, government doesn't do well, but it is something that the private sector does very well. We actually do have a couple things inside the public sector, I2E, OCAST, that do an okay job. I mean, they get appropriated dollars from our legislature. But on the private side, they do it a whole lot better. Oklahoma City Thunder Launchpad's a good example of that. So those are my 2 lanes. And again, I'm blessed that the governor said, hey, listen, I'm governor, you're lieutenant governor. If you're my lieutenant, let's go try to do this together as much as possible. We know you're on fire for tourism. I know you love entrepreneurship and small business growth. You run a small business with your wife. So I'm going to give you some authority over that as well inside the Department of Commerce. And so for the last 7 or 8 months, I've really stayed in those lanes. I mean, I want you to hear this. It's not that I can't be involved in other issues, but I've seen where politicians fail is when they stand up in rooms like this and they talk about all these issues, and it may be a good applause line, but then they go back to the city council or their state rep position or a statewide position, and they have no authority whatsoever to fix those issues that they just talked to you about. Now, I mean, that's frustrating to me. Again, I'll engage where I need to engage, but I have some authority over a couple areas and a couple lanes. I want to stay in my lanes because I only have 4 years. I mean, that's all I'm guaranteed to move the needle in a couple positions, in a couple places that I think are pretty important. So I'll touch on. I'm going to open it up for some questions, obviously. On the commerce side, we certainly do have to look at the governor, as you know, ran a business a whole lot bigger than my business. It was a big reason that he really caught on early. This is someone outside politics that has been successful in the private sector and wanted to bring some of those principles inside of state government. I think something that would be interesting to a room like this. I want you to know at our cabinet meetings, and I've told them they need to really Facebook Live one of these cabinet meetings because it's really fascinating. I sat in on a couple of Mary Fallon's cabinet meetings over the years. Was not in any of Brad Henry's cabinet meetings, so I'm not sure how those went. But I'm pretty sure that the cabinet meetings that we are currently holding right now are unlike any cabinet meetings that we've had. We sit around a table and there's a screen up with an Excel spreadsheet. It's metrics-based approach to doing state government. We have goals. We have quarterly goals that we have to move. We call them rocks. So what are your rocks this quarter that you've got to move to complete your task as Secretary of Tourism? So, yeah, yes, I'm Lieutenant Governor, but I'm sitting there like everybody else. The Secretary of Commerce is right next to me. Secretary of Native American Affairs is right next to me. So we all go down the row and talk about, again, the goals that we have. And they're up on screen, and if they're not color-coded the right way, that means I haven't succeeded that quarter in moving that goal forward. And the governor's sitting right there saying, hey, man, I love you, but what's going on here? Why aren't we fixing this? Why aren't we moving the needle? Because if you've heard his speech, he says moving the needle quite a bit. So listen, that's the way that he operated in the private sector. That's how he operated his business. That's why he was successful in running his business. So we're not just sitting around just shooting the breeze for a couple hours, like sometimes a lot of politicians do. We're sitting around. It is on time. John Budd, who is our COO, if you have not met him, you need to. He's really oversees all of our agencies. He runs the meeting. So the governor knows, listen, it may not be my strength to run a cabinet meeting. Certainly he's talking after every single one of those cabinet members talks and chiming in. But he knows that John Budd, that's his job as CEO, to run the meeting, which is the other thing you need to know. The guy really doesn't have an ego about this, which is extremely rare in politics. And I've seen that very little over the last 20 years in politics. He hires people, the best people that he can find. Most of the time, he wants to find them from the private sector that will come step away from their business for a couple years and give some public service to the state. And he cuts them loose. He lets them go do their job. I mean, and I'm dumbing it down a little bit, but I mean, again, that's a recipe for success in the private sector. You hire good people and you delegate. You cut them loose and you let them go do the job. And that's certainly what he's done, again, with my position. He'll let me speak wherever I want around the state of Oklahoma because he knows that I am focused on the areas that he has put me in charge of. And I love that. And I don't know if I would have gotten that with other folks. I don't know. But I can just tell you what kind of governor I'm able to work with. And certainly we talk quite a bit and are logging a whole lot of minutes together. And I think that's healthy. It's healthy for the state. But on the area of commerce, right in Oklahoma this year, 38 site relocations or companies in Oklahoma that have expanded. So about $1.6 billion in really economic impact with those 38 companies. We need to continue to move those numbers in the right direction. That's something that Sean Copeland, Brent Kissling, and myself are really tasked with. The governor and all governors certainly travel around the country. They're looking at the big relocations or a company here that's not happy. That's kind of where we need to start with, is companies that do business in the state of Oklahoma that are raising families here, fixing air conditionings here, right here, that are on our radio every morning. Rhonda Smith, Triad. So those are the companies, the small businesses that's really my niche over in commerce and that entrepreneurship piece. So a lot of what I'm also doing is going into rooms across the state and talking about accelerators and incubators. And I mentioned that a few minutes ago. The Oklahoma City Thunder Launchpad is going to start a batch, what they call a batch in Tulsa. They got some startup funding to do that here. So I'm actually on this committee. So there's been really, I think, over 40 or 50 applications submitted to us that we'll do interviews with these potential companies, and they'll pick 25 to give startup cash to. Again, private sector dollars. They'll invest in 100 companies over the next 5 years. This Thunder Launchpad, and it's across the state. It's in all 77 counties. Yeah, so the Colorado has 17 accelerators today. We have 1 or 2. Don't even get me started on Dallas or Houston. They have 20 or 30 alone. That is, listen, if a company, a kid, young or old, that has an idea for a business, may have just gotten a patent, has a business plan, but needs to accelerate their business. They need $20,000, $30,000 of startup cash to start their business. They can usually find in most states, in most cities, the Dallas, the Houstons, Kansas Cities, and the Denvers of the world, a number of accelerators that they can, again, submit an application, do an interview process, and be accepted into the accelerator. Where they not only get startup cash, but they also get a team of people around them to help them start this business, people that have started businesses before. Novel concept, I know that cities would do that, or a state would do that. Dallas and the Houstons, the Kansas Cities and the Denvers in particular around us that we compete with are doing that very aggressively, very aggressively.
They have to pay back?
It's not money they have to pay back. Most of the time, it's private equity money, where an individual that's giving money is making a return sometimes on that money. There's many accelerators that are not that way at all. There's many accelerators that, again, companies and individuals in those cities understand, if I don't keep young talent in Houston or Dallas, they're going to leave. They're going to have this brain drain that we certainly feel in Oklahoma in some ways. So it's both. When you go through that accelerator, companies in Oklahoma still leave because we don't have that $1 to $3 million private equity space. That is the next level that we've really got to address. Because again, company goes through the accelerator, it's really rocking and rolling, but it's looking for that next layer of really investment that someone's looking to get a return on, because at that point they know the company is going to be successful. So those areas, the great news is I'm getting phone calls pretty much weekly from people that are starting funds. Donald Trump, through his tax cut bill, created what are called opportunity zones around the state. We have about 117 of these zones. It's one of the best, one of the cooler things that the president did with that tax cut bill. That was something that Tim Scott in South Carolina said, hey, let's create some opportunity zones where people can park capital gains that they've incurred. It'll be tax-free if you leave it in this fund over about 10 years. And you can invest in really economically depressed areas is where these zones are supposed to be. In Oklahoma, we have some zones that aren't exactly in maybe economically depressed areas. And there's one in Edmond. There's a number of them in downtown Tulsa and downtown Oklahoma City, which have become kind of the most intriguing plays for people. But think day traders, right, that have incurred this cap gains, and they're looking to park money somewhere in the country. And they're looking at the middle of the country now because it's a whole lot more expensive to do that on the coasts. So we've actually are going to be taking a few trips. We've already done a couple trips to California to, again, if we have people in California that would like to, again, park money somewhere. Money. Okay, I'm not talking about, yeah, right. You can stay out there. But if they're looking to invest money in a state, they're doing this right now in Ohio a lot. But I'm talking about the money. I'm talking the money is moving. The money is moving across invisible lines all over this country every day. And that was something that, again, over the last decade, it's fascinating to see that only 4 or 5 states is where about 75% of investment happens. Massachusetts, California, New York. It's really striking. And again, that is something that we wanted to help change with these zones. So look into them. Our Department of Commerce is doing a pretty good job now of having an inventory of these shovel-ready projects across the state of Oklahoma. That's exciting. We wanted to look out there and see what other states were doing well, and we've kind of matched it. The front door to all of that economic development, I believe, is tourism. I believe tourism is the front door to economic development because if we can get people off these roads and bridges and they spend money in our communities, then they see how great our communities are. It's a very magical thing that happens when people come to Oklahoma. They say, well, gosh, I had no idea. And I'm getting very frustrated hearing that in some ways. Yeah, I've known it for a very long time. You've known it for a very long time. This is a great place. It's actually extremely diverse landscape and our people love to work. We've got a great workforce and there's no traffic. And you don't have to stand in line for 2 hours to get a reservation in any of our great restaurants. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And we have running water in tall buildings. Like we have all of these things. And people see it when they get off our roads and bridges and travel Route 66 or come in for our Native American history, pioneering spirit, 200 lakes, 39 tribes. We're more unique as a tourism state than really any other state in the country. No state can match our heritage and our history. I mean, no state. I mean, think about that. So all I want to do is play to our strengths. I don't want to don't want to turn Oklahoma into something that it's not. Let's just be Oklahoma. Let's play to our strengths. And I don't think we've done that when it comes to our tourism industry. Yes.
I moved here from Boston 25 years ago.
I hear it.
And my brother still lives on the East Coast. And he said, I moved here from Boston 25 years ago. And my brother still lives on the East Coast, and he said, I will not even drive to Maine anymore because the traffic is so bad from Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful about Tulsa.
Yeah.
I mean, the landscape here is a lot like New England, hilly, green trees everywhere. You know, coming from Boston, I thought I will never live in Oklahoma because I thought it was flat and dry, you know, didn't want. But after being here, it's gorgeous. You have the 4 seasons, you know,
sure.
And there's no traffic. That's huge.
It is something that we do have to do a better job of marketing. I mean, you said it. I would never live in Oklahoma because you thought Oklahoma was this, right? And I do hear that quite a bit. And that's something that visually we have to do a better job of showing.
But also, something that impressed me after we moved here was all the lakes. Mm-hmm. I can go anywhere in Oklahoma in a half an hour.
That's right.
And take my boat and have a fantastic day on the lake.
Yes.
And that's huge because in New England, you know, everybody has to go out of state to go to a lake.
Yep.
So
That's why I launched an Oklahoma fishing trail in Oklahoma. One of the many reasons, but yeah, 200 lakes. But those are things that, again, we have to do a better job of promoting. So playing to our strengths is a big theme for me in my office. That's why I talk a whole lot about career tech infrastructure, because I think it's one of our greatest strengths as well. But sticking to, again, that tourism piece, a couple areas that you will see some opportunities for you all to help us engage in this industry. Route 66, I mean, I mention in every speech that I give, Oklahoma will be the premier Route 66 state in the country when I am done as your lieutenant governor. There is no reason why we shouldn't be. We have more drivable miles of this road than any other state. So again, let's play to that strength. If we don't jump on that train, it's going to pass us. We're leading up to the centennial here in a few years of Route 66. And what's very fascinating to see, and you all know this in this room, Americans are looking for that authentic American experience again. They're looking for what's America look like? Because, I'm frustrated. I don't really recognize this country anymore. What is happening here? There's an American Renaissance happening. There is, with Americans, with patriots in this country. And I think Route 66 is a really great sell for those Americans and international tourists that are looking to come to America and see what America looks like. Yes.
I've met bicyclists
Yes.
that have come from Europe.
Yeah.
That started in Chicago and are riding, Route 66.
That's right.
And I
That's
think
right.
things like that.
Hopefully not in August.
Yeah.
promoted.
Well,
I think
some
things
of them.
like that should be
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, my husband and I took a car trip Route 66 into New Mexico, and we kept seeing all these little European open touring cars, and
Yeah.
they would all have a Route 66 silver and black medallion mounted on the fender of the car. And these were people who actually shipped their cars from England, from Germany, into the United States for the sole purpose of driving Route 66. It was amazing.
I know. It is amazing. That will be, it's an area that we are dedicating existing marketing dollars to. I don't have a whole lot of time to get into it, but I know it won't shock you that I've gotten into a government agency and found where we could spend money better. But we're doing that because I essentially run the tourism department. There's hundreds of employees, multi-million-dollar budget. Yeah.
Are there private entrepreneurs out there that want to put like retro things up along the road?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because again, like I said on the commerce side, one of my jobs is to really cast this vision and light the private sector on fire. I can't do all this inside of government, nor should we. It doesn't work that way. I've got a very limited marketing budget that I get to spend, and we're going to spend it on things that again are our strengths. But I've got to light the private sector on fire for Route 66. Now, again, the great news, there's a great story about an 18-year-old in Miami, Oklahoma, that is a young entrepreneur that just bought an old Route 66 gas station that he's retrofitting. He had a snow cone business as well that was pretty successful. I'm going to go see him soon. If we can get individuals like that, and then the Mary Beth Ruths of the world who say, hey, I'm going to turn an old roadside gas station into what she's dubbed Buck Adams Route 66 Curios, and build a 20-foot muffler man and then double her sales by doing it. If we can get all of that together, we're doing it's the most, again, drivable miles, the most miles, and the easiest navigable miles as well. Oklahoma City's kind of tough. It breaks up some there in Oklahoma City, but then you just start piecing all that together. But it is a very good point that the private sector has got to play a big role here.
Have you ever heard of America's greatest flea market?
Yes.
Where it's the trail they start.
Oh, yeah.
It's in Georgia and
Yeah.
it starts somewhere in Illinois.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
We should do something like that along Route 66.
It's a great idea. We have the first Route 66 stakeholder convention in December at the Oklahoma Historical Society. That's a place where I am going to be pulling in the Oklahoma Historical Society much more on these efforts, because they have funding as well that we could tap into. Tulsa does a good job. Yes.
Okay, Matt, I read a kind of depressing or scary article yesterday from OCPA.
Yes.
About how some law firm, or it's a group, saying we're a hellhole because we pass good legislature, but then our Supreme Court is really bad, and they're overthrowing so much, and companies don't want to come here because of our Supreme Court.
I will read that article. And yeah, I mean, our state Supreme Court. Yeah. I'm not sure when the governor may have an appointment. We only have one though, right?
JNC met yesterday and forwarded 3 names to the governor's office last night.
Okay. But forwarded 4 names for one spot. So again, we'll get there, but there is no doubt. I mean, listen, that's the same. I could say that with a lot of others, Corporation Commission and those type of entities as well. We have to make sure that they're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Matt,
Yeah. Hold on.
bringing up
Yeah.
Route 66, as you know, I'm a huge fan
Yeah.
and promoter. But I do have some concerns about some of the programs and some of the commission setup. So when you have 15 minutes,
Of course.
let's talk about it, because
Definitely.
I do want to help with that. Actually, I was on the steering committee for the first Route 66 event we had in downtown Tulsa some years back, and that was a year-long strategy in itself. But I'm
Yeah.
a huge fan, as you know, coupled with, again, owning our own culture historically
Yeah.
and protecting those assets has been my mantra for how many years?
Yeah.
Anyone that knows me. So yeah, those assets have value.
Yeah.
If Tulsa would embrace it,
Right.
we'd be better off for entrepreneurship.
Well, I'll mention you another local business leader, Arthur Greeno, who you should have speak here sometime. So Arthur runs a few.
He houses for Comic-Con.
Yes.
In the same industrial area where we are. In fact, he uses our white.
Okay. Well, Arthur. So Arthur doesn't need to do that because Arthur runs a few Chick-fil-A's in town. He's a very successful entrepreneur. But Arthur, private sector, said we need a Comic-Con because it really sells. I mean, Comic-Cons are huge. It's not my thing, but it's a lot of people's thing. And he's building comic convention, but it's like pop culture. It's pop culture convention. But he is using the old Sears right here for the Comic-Con that is going to be coming in this year. He's building a Batmobile in town. So follow him. You need to follow him on Facebook. He's a really great individual. But I think he's tapped into something. Again, he came to our tourism department because, again, conventions, putting heads in beds is really what will move, again, tourism numbers. We have to get overnight stays as well. And so what conventions are popular and that we already have and that we could go help, like an Arthur Greeno of the world?
Shoot a few UFOs up in the
Well, that too. Again, that's an idea for Arthur. That is an idea for Arthur. Yes.
Quick question. Before we get too far from the Supreme Court, is it a priority of the governor to completely change this current system of nominating Supreme Court justices? Because it's the current system is just bad. It's just a system to give the left guarantee that the left has a last look at all our legislation.
I don't know if it is what kind of priority is. I guarantee you it's a priority with the nominations that we now have to get the right person in there. So I think that's his focus. As far as a wholesale change on it, I can ask him, but I haven't had that conversation. Yeah. Yes.
I know in the last 4 months we've been having conversations with the governor's office, and it's becoming an increasing priority, specifically for that reason, what OCPA talked about with the judicial hellhole, which is quite an interesting term. But still, it's because companies look at states like Oklahoma, where you could pass great legislation and then it's almost a guarantee that the Supreme Court will overthrow it. It is a priority for them.
Yeah.
They realize that for sure.
Don't we get to vote to not retain people on the Supreme Court?
That's all we get to do.
Yeah.
We need to be.
Correct. Yeah.
I'd like to talk about the RNC campaign management class I was so lucky to go to. We need to support people like David Ambrose and other young people. I agree with Why did I get to go when there should have been a 21-year-old or 25 that can work on that? And this wasn't that your bailiwick when you were at RNC? Guys, it was $1,500 out of my pocket to go there, and I underpaid for the education that 5 days there. So kudos to the RNC for sponsoring that.
You're ready to go then, man.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful boot camp, but it's a boot camp. It's the RNC's Campaign Management College.
We should be bootstrapping teenagers to go to the
Agree.
well, the turning points thing they just had.
Yeah, well, also very good. Also very good. Yeah. Yeah.
We need those conferences.
But sure. Well, David McClain just hosted a campaign management college at their headquarters in Oklahoma City. I spoke at it. And there was one in Oklahoma City as well. Yeah.
Other questions?
Your Honor, could I ask?
Yes, sir. Yes.
I'm Cass Baylor, Tulsa City Council.
Yeah.
You had mentioned talking about the incubators and we're talking about bringing in a younger voice, a younger generation to help continue on. The only concern or part of the issues that some of us have just been monitoring, even George Kaiser Foundation has gone out and tried to recruit roughly $10,000-$15,000 for moving, et cetera, to bring young entrepreneurs in. Outstanding. The only concern is that a lot of them do bring in a highly liberal agenda. How do we combat, or how do we balance that, and to continue our tourism and to continue our corporate environment, et cetera?
Yeah.
Why isn't Mr. Kaiser sponsoring Oklahoma kids or Oklahoma young?
Yeah. That has come up. I've had that brought up a few different times. And again, it's why I love tourism dollars, because someone from California wants to come drive the Mother Road and drop a bunch of money in sales tax dollars and then cross over that invisible line and go back to Colorado or any of their other states. That's good money for us. And we have to be creating those opportunities. Again, we get most of our people coming in from Texas, but they're coming in and they're going to our casinos. And when they go to those casinos, they stay in those casinos. They've got all the restaurants and the hotels, right there. So we're getting very little them leaving and then visiting a museum or any of our other shops. So the tourism piece, set that aside for a second. Listen, Oklahoma, conservative state. Some would argue in some places more than other places. I see it as I crisscross this state. My priority again is existing businesses. It's existing entrepreneurs in Oklahoma. It's to stop the above the fold headlines. Judicial. What was the headline? Hellhole. I also don't want Oklahoma. The brain drain continues, which is also a story that I read of a few months ago. So that's my priority, and I believe in large part Governor Stitt's as well. We're trying to fix again existing things here. Now again, if a company's looking to relocate, we've on a number of occasions, 5 or 6 times already in our administration, we certainly have been talking to companies, big manufacturing companies, tire plant, a couple others that there's a couple that can't talk about that we're talking to already. I would say they're very good opportunities and good companies is the way that I would put that. Sure, it's always a concern, but where we are, we want to create more private sector jobs in the state of Oklahoma. I want to grow it organically. Broken Arrow is the example that I give. Broken Arrow 20 years ago, they said, hey, we've got to figure out something here, and we're not going to hit a bunch of grand slams. So let's just hit a bunch of singles and doubles. And they kept their homegrown talent here, and they have one of the, if not the top manufacturing base in the entire state now. It's just manufacturing company after manufacturing company. Most of all of that was built here, and there's a lot of Tulsans manufacturing companies that are moving to Broken Arrow. They like the climate better, they like the politics better. So it's happening. Just did a plant tour this week out there. So I'm sensitive to it, but on the same note, we want to recruit people from out of state if they want to live in Oklahoma and be an Oklahoman and what all that means, but also make sure that we're focused on growing our own.
I think this goes back to your opportunity zones thing that you were talking about. we were founded as a nation as a giant opportunity zone. I mean, we're supposed to be the land of the free, and you can see it that, you know, Tulsa's laws and rules and everything get overbearing. People move to a place that's less. Broken Arrow, and it's obvious the way that they run things. So I think I mean, would you address that? I mean, and where is the governor and you at with turning the entire state back into an opportunity zone and getting our rights back?
Yeah. So it is a good point. Yeah, I don't want there to be just 117 opportunity zones. It would be great, that the whole state, and with our rebranding campaign, I hope that some of that plays itself out, that this is still the land of the free. This is still America. This is still, come to Oklahoma, individual rights. It's something that Texas certainly has played to with their growth that they've seen over the many decades in Texas, that there's something to it. There's not a whole lot of stories written on that. And yes, the governor has a quick action closing fund there where he's able to bribe companies in some ways. But that really wasn't the secret sauce. I mean, it really was, again, the branding in the state of Texas that, hey, you can still be free here. Free enterprise, we still believe in free enterprise in the state of Texas, and this whole state is an opportunity. That's their brand. I mean, that's Texas's brand. Yes, they have some incentives as well, and so do we in Oklahoma, but that's not going to close the whole deal. It's not going to close the whole deal. So every day we have these conversations. Most of them don't revolve around what new incentive we need to have. I mean, we got Quality Jobs Act here. We have a quick action closing fund here, but it is making sure that we have a better climate. The schools are always something that, schools, roads, again, a decade ago, or maybe even longer, we had bridges literally crumbling on top of us. And we said, we've got to have much better bridges. We now are a top 10 state when it comes to bridges. We invested in bridges. We got to get there with roads. We do. Particularly if people are going to continue to travel Route 66, for goodness sakes. Yes.
Look at the schools.
Yeah.
And we've got to address the curriculum.
Yeah.
And we've got to support our private schools that are at this time somewhat doing a better job, but the more we ignore what's going on in education, I just look at Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. She is a poster child for public education. That is what they're turning out. That is what they're turning out. And unless we address the curriculum and get in there and fight for individual liberty and economic prosperity to be instructed in our schools, we won't have a young generation to embrace these ideals.
School board. No, we've talked about school board for 20 years. We've personally recruited school board members. People don't realize how much power those school board members have over everything, by the way, not just from a funding perspective, from curriculum. Listen, our kids are in Jinx, and we like Jinx, but it's also because the parental involvement is very heavy there, very intense there, meaning what? If we don't like something, we get them to fix it. But there's a lot of school districts that don't have parental involvement. So I don't know exactly what the answer there is yet, but I can tell you certainly it is political involvement from a local school board level, state rep and state senator level. And again, you all know this. I know I'm preaching to the choir there, but if we do that and continue to do that, we will help change, again, those school districts. And parental involvement has to be part of the, again, where you have kids going to school that don't have a mom and dad at home. And so there's no parental involvement, and then they go home and their parents aren't home. There's no before or after school program for them. Then those test scores aren't going to be real great sometimes. And so that's something we're looking into as well. That schools that do offer, Union has actually a pretty good before and after school program that has been pretty helpful to some kids that don't have a mom or dad at home. before or after school for that matter. Listen, we're watching it. We're on top of it. It is something, along with judicial reform, education will continue to be something that is debated every legislative session. Well, what's being debated? Do we even, but what's being debated? Right. So we've got to make sure that if we're going to have a conversation on the floor of our state house or Senate, that it's something that, again, we would want. And that local control has to play a huge role. And that's why organizations like AFP, again, Turning Points is involved now on those local school board races too. Yeah.
Maybe one or two more questions?
I just wanted to make a comment. One of the strengths that you really need to push that Oklahoma has is the VOTEC system.
Oh, 100%.
Kansas has virtually no VOTEC system.
That's right.
And the difference is stunning.
Yes. Yes. So one of our, again, playing to our strengths. So I talk about it in every speech I give. Don't worry. I just was kind of focused on the tourism piece here this morning. Our career tech infrastructure is the best in the country. We're on a top 10 list. Breaking news. Us and Georgia have the best career tech infrastructure in the entire country. Any site relocation firm tells me this. So let's play to that strength. They have a pretty stable funding formula right now as well. And you're right, Kansas doesn't have this. Louisiana doesn't have it. Texas doesn't even have it. They have a pretty good VOTEC, but it's not. In Oklahoma, you can get to a career tech facility within an hour, really anywhere. And it's one of our better recruitment tools. Tulsa Tech lures a whole lot more companies to Oklahoma than any incentive. They've got a whole list of success stories because that company wants to come where there's a workforce, where they can go to Tulsa Tech and create specific curriculum in 6 weeks. Tulsa Tech can do that. So, pat them on the back and all the rest of them. If you don't like what they're doing, certainly tell me, because we do know that there's some degrees that they're offering that we want to make sure that we preach more about for sure. But the great thing about Career Tech too is they're flexible. We can move if there's a growing industry. I was just at a rubber plant manufacturer in Broken Arrow this week. They want to create some curriculum inside because we create a ton of rubber products in the state of Oklahoma. We could create a whole lot of more manufacturing facilities because of it. So Career Tech is absolutely something that the governor and I both will be talking a whole lot about over these 4 years.
It'd be nice to put them in the prisons too.
Well, listen, they are. Career Tech, some great success stories. Career Tech is in the prisons. They are, and doing a pretty good job of it, actually.
Also gotta find the employers that are willing to hire felons.
That's right.
As
Yeah.
and perhaps, I'm not a fan of tax credits and stuff.
Yeah.
But I would think that any business that is willing to take a chance on a felon, and to be quite honest, I think that felons probably, if they're coming out, they're going to want to prove themselves. And someone told me the other day that they have rental properties and they prefer to rent to felons or former felons, whatever, but because they are trying to prove themselves, and they're going to make sure that the property's taken care of, that the rent's there
Bingo.
on time. They're going to,
Yeah.
and so, a lot of these people, just need those opportunities. You and I had talked one time about hemp.
Mm-hmm.
And they did make hemp growing, I think, only within the colleges right now, legal. But I think that that's a huge industry
Yep.
that we're missing out on because we've got the right climate, the right soil, and we've got manufacturing opportunities when it comes to hemp because of clothing, cosmetics, you name it.
It's coming. I was actually Senator Allen in the state Senate, lives down in the Sequoia County, and there's some hemp manufacturing that's happening down in that area. It's coming.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's coming. Yeah.
There's other businessmen there, and the problem they're experiencing is they want to hire some of these men, and they can train them, as you said. The training is available, but we have to look at the model in place because they're required still to check in with their parole officers and time away from work, and there's a better way to do that, to manage that. So keep that in mind.
Thinking of top 10 lists, when are we going to get off of the top 10 list of most incarcerated people for ridiculous crimes.
Yeah. So that's coming too. Baby steps, and I wish they were bigger steps than baby steps, but passed some good legislation last session. We're not done. That's the way I can put it. We're not done. We're already having conversations with legislators about more legislation this next session. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that historically, a lot of Oklahoma lieutenant governors haven't fully utilized their great authority, legislative authority as president of the Senate. And I think a great example when it was used was in Mary Fallon's finest hour as president of the Senate. She was able to get, that's why we have right to work. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering if you plan to have any plans to maybe be more visible and take a bigger role as the president of the Senate.
Well, I was last session than previous lieutenant governors. I was presided over the Senate a little bit more. Greg Treat and I have talked about even doing that more next session. I break tie-breaking votes if there is one. I don't know if there will be one. And yes, presiding over the Senate when I can. So I'm going to be involved in legislation behind the scenes. That's where things actually happen. Whether things actually get on the floor or not. So I was extremely involved, let's put it that way, last legislative session on a number of pieces of a number of bills. When you get to the floor, a lot of it's theatrics. So I'm in offices, State House and State Senate offices, in their face when I need to be on pieces of legislation. Now, again, yes, President of the State Senate, I take that role seriously. I will not be presiding every day, and I will break tie-breaking votes when that is needed, if that comes up. But really, where I see that is is that beforehand, right now, legislators are coming up with ideas, some good ideas, some very bad ideas for legislation. That they want to introduce next session. Right now is when I'm getting in their faces, in a good way, okay? In a good way. But that's really where I see my role. So I'm much more involved from a legislative, I can honestly say that, and I'll be very visible when I need to be visible. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we will see you all on Tuesday night, 6:30.